I looked at it as a cautionary tale. In other words, it was definitely, thank you very much, it was definitely fun to dance with Dionysus, but as I wrote about it, if you dance with Dionysus, you're going to end with your son's heads on your dancing stick. So it's not, there's no free lunch. My critique of my colleagues at that time was that there was a kind of emotional, sexual, liberatory free lunch. There was a book, there was a famous guy called Herbert Marcuse who wrote a book called Eros and... what? No, Eros and Civilization. And basically he said it was taking off from Civilization's discontents of Freud. If you remove repression, everything will be perfect and utopian. And I did not believe that so at all. Although I liked the liberatory tendency. But I was, and I love the Greeks because the Greek tragedians saw ineluctably irresolvable human situations. That's, you know, if you want a definition of tragedy from Schechner's point of view, it's not pity and fear, it's not catharsis, it's a problem that will not be solved because the problem is existence. So that I join, admire, and participate in utopian movements, whether they're Marxism or liberation, but I know that they are not possible ultimately. They only, just like our own individual life is a temporary life. So for me, each utopian movement is a temporary liberation, and there'll always be a payback. So that's what this story is about. Now that's not about, we can talk about the technical, because here we're talking about the film. Let me say a little bit about the making of the film, then I know you have a question back there. So Finley, who played Dionysus in the film, we rotated the roles actually, but he did play it most of the time. He was friends with Brian De Palma. At the very beginning of the film, you see two figures. You see a kind of chubby mustached guy at the door, that's me. And you see a very sleek-looking young mafioso coming in a suit. That's De Palma. So we both decided to make cameo appearances in that way. Me taking the tickets, which I almost always did, and I did here in Austin also at the Roots. And he as the filmmaker, but not the, he wasn't the, there were three filmmakers. He wasn't, he never held a camera. The others did the camera, but he did the directing of the film. Okay, so Finley knew De Palma and had made one movie with him. I believe it was either Hi Mom or Greetings. I get the two of them confused. One is right before Dionysus, one is right after Dionysus. In any event, Dionysus is De Palma's second full-length film. I don't know what he did as a student and so on. But that was his second film that had some degree of commercial distribution. So they came to me, or Brian came to me and said, I want to make a film with Bruce Rubin and Bob Fiore of your piece. They had made the film Pumping Iron before, or Bob Fiore had made the film Pumping Iron, which features Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's about muscle guys, of which Schwarzenegger is the chief one, at about that same time. It's a very interesting film, Pumping Iron. So I said, great. But it was late in the run. We opened the play on June 8th, 1968, and this proposal came in the winter and spring, and the money wasn't raised until we were ready to close the play. If you'll notice in the split screen, which was Brian's very brilliant solution to how do you get an environmental staging, how do you represent that in film, I thought that was a super brilliant solution. And I think it was his. I'd like to claim it was mine. My memory could be elapsed, but I think it was his idea. And when we looked at it, at the rushes, of course, these were the days when you had to shoot celluloid. You could not, you didn't have tape, and you certainly didn't have digital. So you're shooting celluloid. So we shot the last night of the play. That's the dark screen. And the next morning, Brian and I met, and we looked at each other. And I said, but what if it doesn't come out? And he said, yeah, what if it doesn't come out? We need a second take. What if we miss something? We won't know for 2 weeks till we develop this. So I said, okay, Why wouldn't it come out? He says, because it's so dark in there so much. You gotta have, I don't know. So I said, okay, well, let's do one other extra performance. We'll invite audiences. Everybody got on the phone. We'll invite as many people as we can, and I'll keep all the lights on all the time. So you'll notice if you wouldn't maybe notice, but I noticed some very big differences. First of all, there are a lot of times when one of the screens is very light, one of the screens is very dark. A lot of times when there's a lot of people in the room, and a lot of times when there are just half that many people in the room. At the very end, when Pentheus is marked with blood, there's times when he's marked with blood, and then in the light thing, he's not marked with blood. We ran out of blood. So the blood is from night 1, but not from night 2. And things like that. So that, again, seeing it once, you don't notice these things. Me, I've seen this a lot of times, so those are the circumstances. Then we performed the play for most of the time. The birth and death rituals were performed completely naked. I don't like the word nude. Try not to use it in my presence, unless you're referring to something in a museum that is a, quote, a nude genre, but not in this, they're naked. And, the women are wearing these little chitons, and the men are wearing these dance belts or jock straps. And and we did do that at the beginning of the run when it opened, but after about 2 months, we performed Birth and Death completely naked. But we wanted to have this film distributed. It got an X rating anyway, but we wanted to make a ton of money. That was the idea. I mean, that was part of the idea. I wanted to document, but I also wanted to, you know, so I decided to have them. I knew that if there was 12 people, there are 11 people in this version of it, 11 or 12, and if they were all completely naked, full frontal, including the men, we would never get it distributed. As it was, we snuck in one penis and a couple of breasts and a little female pubic hair in the dances, and that went by for some reason, and we got an X rating, but not a you know, it was not. It did get national distribution, though there were a lot of places that wouldn't show it. It didn't make a ton of money, but I'm very glad that the film exists. So that was why they're dressed and not naked. There is a book, Dionysus in '69, which came out in 1970, which I edited, and that book has both dressed and naked, but most of the shots of the birth and death are done naked. Indeed, and the Rudes follow the book in that regard. When Pentheus comes out of the pit, he is naked and he does his dances. That's his women's clothing in quotation marks. In the film, he's got his shorts on, and so, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know what other circumstances of the film you want to know, or anything else you would like to ask or discuss. It seemed to hold your interest, which was nice. Yes, back there.
Quick question. It seemed like most of the music and voices were coming from the actors, but there was one part before, say, the middle of the film where it seemed like there was some synthesizer going on. There was a gong or something.
The gong was the synthesizer, and that I don't like. That was Brian. I've had several films made of my plays, and rightly or wrongly, I say, I'm hoisted on my own petard. I say to playwrights, look, I'm going to take your work and do what I need to do with it. I want to interpret it. I want to do your thing, but I need to have liberty. So when somebody makes a film, I say, you can do what you want with it. I just want my credit for it, but it's your film. So, for example, the film of Tooth of Crime, they resequenced it a little bit. It breaks my heart because I wanted it in the sequence that I directed it, but the two filmmakers resequenced it. Brian didn't think that the dance had enough music, so he added that gong, but that's the only thing. The flute, the drums, the tambourines, and the voices, everything else is actual. So the gong, you're quite right, is an added thing. The Rudes then use a kind of gong-like thing following the movie, and the first time I saw their rehearsals a few weeks ago, they had a very deep gong and it didn't work, and I asked them to change it, and they did. They now have a littler gong, which works quite well. But that's based on the film, that there was no gong in the actual stage production.